Alright, fellow druids, another episode of Full Circle. Today I'm going to again discuss Una the Skyhunter, Una 2. We talked about her way back when I was counting episodes in episode 8, which was well before she received some errata and before a lot of the game has changed. And given that she's one of Circle's kind of go-to warlocks these days for many people, I thought it would be a good time to basically just do a model unit review for her again. I will note where some things changed, just mostly for curiosity's sake for those of you concerned, but I mean obviously we're not going back to where she was, so really where she is now is what we want to focus on. Alright, so let's go through the stats first, and we'll talk about lists and strengths and so forth. So she is speed 6, strength 5, mat 5, rat 6, defense 15, armor 15, command 8. She has pathfinder. She's a small base model. She is fury 7. She has 15 wounds, 29 war beast points, and of course is a character. Her attacks are wind strike, which is a range 10, rate of fire 1, pow 10 magical attack. Damage type magical attack. And she also has Talon Strike, which has a 2-inch range and is power and strength 9, and again is magical. Has damage type magical. Then let's just talk real quick about her attacks. So her ranged attack, Wind Strike, actually has 3 attack types that you choose each time you make an attack with that weapon. It has Black Penny, which is an attack. This attack ignores the target in melee defense bonus. She has Snipe, which gives her plus 4 inches of range on the spell, going up to range 14. And she has Thunderbolt, which is enemy models hit are pushed D3 inches directly away from the attacking model, and if you have a critical hit, the enemy model becomes knocked down after being pushed. Although I don't think it really matters what the order is, but whatever. And then she also has Reload 2 on that weapon, which just says this model can spend Fury points to make up to 2 additional ranged attacks with this weapon during its combat action. It can make 1 additional attack for each Fury point spent. And then her other special rules, which are very relevant, are Birds of Prey. While in Una's control range, Griffin warbeasts in her battle group gain flank another Griffin in Una's battle group. When a model with flank another Griffin in Una's battle group makes a melee attack against an enemy model within the melee range of another Griffin in Una's battle group, the model with flank gains plus 2 to attack rolls and an additional die on damage. She also has Hawker, which is a rule that states while in this model's command range, which was 8, you will note from before, warbeasts in its battle group with flight gains sprint. And then sprint is at the end of an activation in which it destroyed or removed from play 1 or more enemy models with melee attacks. A model with sprint can immediately make a full advance, and then its activation ends. Okay, her spell list is first spell is Hand of Fate. It's a 2-cost, range 6, upkeep. It's not offensive. Target friendly faction model / unit gains an additional die in attack and damage rolls. Discard the low die in each roll. She has Mirage. Target friendly, cost 2, range 6, is an upkeep, non-offensive. Target friendly faction model / unit gains Apparition, and what Apparition says is during a control phase, place models with Apparition anywhere completely within 2 inches of their current locations. Her third spell is Twister, 2-cost, range 10, AoE 3, POW 10, lasts for a round, is offensive. The AoE is a cloud effect that remains in play for 1 round. And finally, she has Wind Wall, which is a 3-cost range self, lasts for a round, a non-offensive spell. It says the spellcaster cannot make ranged attacks after casting this spell, and non-magical ranged attacks targeting it automatically miss, while completely within 3 inches of the spellcaster models cannot make ranged attacks, and non-magical ranged attacks targeting them automatically miss. Wind Wall lasts for 1 round. And then finally, her feat from on high. Friendly faction models with flight currently in her control range gain plus 2 speed for 1 turn. Additionally, while in Una's control range, friendly faction light warbeasts with flight cannot be targeted by melee attacks. From on high lasts for 1 turn. Okay, so real quick, just to talk about the errata that happened was that from on high used to last for a round. It now lasts for a turn. That meant a lot of things that we used to be able to do that were quite silly. We can't do now. Game is probably better as a result of that change, but that's what it is. So the feat is actually, I would say, not exceptional, but it is a very important part of her kit. The fact that you don't get too much defensive benefit out of it is, I would say, puts it back in the average to slightly above average range of feats, but in a way that is like is acceptable basically for the game. So, but let's talk about a few things with her to note. So the biggest thing is, especially if this is someone you're looking at for the first time, I want to kind of go over everything. So the biggest thing to note is everything about her kit outside of her spell list is talking about griffins and things that fly. It's important to note, even though it doesn't matter, her feat does say faction models with flight. It does not say they have to be in her battle group. It doesn't even say they have to be war beasts. So anything with flight, if we ever get anything else with flight, will benefit from the non-light war beast portion of her feat. So the +2 speed portion of the feat. But as we look at most of her benefits, they're really looking at the idea of you playing Griffin war beasts and in general flying models. So Birds of Prey, which is probably her most crucial rule, is the one that gives flank to friendly faction, Griffin warbeasts in her battle group. And the Griffin warbeasts right now are the Scarsfell Griffin, the Razorwing Griffin, and the Robberhorn Griffin. I do hope for her sake, just for some build variety, that we maybe get more at some point. A heavy Griffin could be quite interesting, maybe a character. But as it stands, those are currently the Griffin models that are available. And I think you can really build her battle group with many of them. Also, Hawker is an ability that also looks at warbeasts with flight in her battle group. And they can gain sprint, but they have to be inside of her command of 8. And I think a lot of people, when they first see her, are kind of like, and especially if you played her before the errata, I think a lot of people look at that benefit and sort of wave it off because they're like, oh, she's going to have to be too far forward to really be in a safe position to do that. And I think that that's a mistake. Don't just dismiss that rule. I think it's actually incredibly critical to playing her, especially if you're going to keep playing her at, kind of the highest level. And the reason for that is you actually can keep her pretty safe a lot of the time just by utilizing the terrain and shifting stones to her benefit. So a lot of times you can, and so thus I recommend trying to fit shifting stones into her lists whenever possible. And one of the reasons for that is you can have the shifting stones be a little farther forward and walk her up kind of as far as you can into them. Or if you have 2 units, you can place her with one into the other, or you can place a stone with the other one to make a different triangle. But I recommend it because what you can do then is walk her up in a place that she probably has no business standing, but will put her within 8 inches of the back of the base of the griffins that you need to execute sprint with. And why that is a big reason why that's relevant is you want to, a lot of times in order to get the maximum number or amount of damage out on her feet, and or even not on her feet, but on the Alpha Strike, is to be able to, when you kill one model with a griffin, be able to sprint it to engage another one, so that the next griffin that comes in already has that flank bonus. Because one of the things is you can sort of do the math and get a lot of damage out of the griffins, but you have to be flanking to do so. And unless you want to basically be spending half of your activations being subpar and then the other half getting the nice flank benefit, what you want to do is try to get the flank benefit repeatedly by walking farther and farther forward. At least that's my general experience. So that makes this rule extremely relevant. Now with the SR 2017 terrain layout, a lot of times there's a building or forest or something in the middle of the table she can actually stand behind and be safe. And in those cases, I recommend doing so. She also, like I said, you can use the shifting stone trick, and sometimes you can just, you know, there's just going to be somebody close, and you can get the benefit anyways. So these are all things to keep in mind. Another one to remember is that the sprint goes up to speed 9 on her feet. It's a whole turn speed benefit, and sprint lets you move your speed. So those griffins can all move 9 inches. Both those benefits obviously don't apply to the Storm Raptor, which is the 4th war beast we have with flight, but her feet does. So the +2 speed is certainly not irrelevant for that reason. And then of course the next thing is always be looking, sort of going over the front of her card, always be looking to get those ranged attacks when you can, at least one, when you're not having to spend the Fury to buy more. And just look, because occasionally you're going to be able to close out a game by being able to get a Thunderbolt shot in the right place. Again, another reason shifting stones can come in handy. You now have about an 18-inch threat on a Thunderbolt shot, and you can buy an additional one. So, that's going to be a benefit that's going to certainly pay dividends in some cases and matches. So be looking for that. Obviously, look for Black Penny also, because sometimes it's going to make sense to unjam your Griffins. Or the other things in your list, and that's something that she can do pretty well. She doesn't have Bird's Eye like her non-Warcaster, non-Warlock, full Warlock incarnation, but she does have, but she is able to ignore the penalty at least for shooting into melee. So, and at least one of the Griffins, the Scarsfell Griffin, does have Sprint. Or, I'm sorry, does have stealth, so sometimes she's going to be far enough back that she can ignore them for line of sight purposes anyways. But let's talk about her spell list, because I think this is the other part that sort of lends you to look at her in a lot of different ways. So she has her big 2 moneymakers in my opinion are Hand of Fate and Mirage. Hand of Fate, which is to the untrained eye a deceptively good buff spell. And, you know, you're thinking like, well, adding a die and removing it, and adding a die and removing it still means that you're, like, looking at 2 dice, right? So you're not technically getting any bonus, you know, you're not getting, like, a +2, you're not getting anything like that, and you're not getting, it's not like a Weapon Master, things like that, Battle Lust, Bloodlust, those sort of things, but it does do 2 things. One, on average, depending on where you're at in the curve, you actually end up almost at +2 and +2 for both of those abilities, and then it depends, and that varies, it can be better or worse than that, but if you think about it as pretty close to that, you'll be right on track. And then the other thing is it actually applies to hitting and damage, which there aren't a lot of buffs that apply to both. So Hand of Fate is actually a pretty fantastic spell, and this is one of the reasons why I think you don't want to just consider Scarsfell's Griffins as your battle. This spell by itself, and the next one we're going to talk about too, but this one especially means the more attacks you can generate with it, and more damage rolls and things like that, the better, right? So if you put it on a Scarsfell Griffin, you're going to be able to, it has 3 initials and 3 fury, so in theory 6 attacks, right? where you're getting additional die to hit and additional die to damage. If we look at even, let's start looking at other battle group options, right? So let's say you bring a Pureblood Warpwolf to the occasion, right? They can still make those 6 attacks in melee. If they can get a free charge, they actually add the spray in, and the spray is the big deal, right? So it's Rat 5, POW 14, but now if that spray covers 4 or 5 models, you're getting that from a ranged attack, which is quite nice. And with the assault, like I said, you could potentially be talking about a dozen or so damage, attack and damage rolls that Hand of Fate is actually buffing up. If you look at something like the Storm Raptor, it has a ranged attack, which it can buy an additional shot of, and gets D3 leaps. So now you're talking about 2 attack rolls, and as somewhere between, what is it, 2, 4, 1, the leap, minimum of 4, maximum of, let's see, we get another 4, 8, minimum of 4, maximum of 8 additional die rolls. So that's a lot of bonuses that you're getting from Hand of Fate. If you go into melee, those electro leaps you're getting are all going to benefit from that too. And then it's the number of attack rolls we're talking about is hugely substantial. And then it still will apply to Plasma Nimbus too if they attack it back. So there's a lot of possible attacks with something like that as well. Possibly even something like a Berserking Warpwolf Stalker, Wold Weirds who have 3 ranged attacks and already can be Weapon Masters against things with spells on them. But as we start looking outside of the battle group, I think there's a lot of compelling directions to go as well too. Pretty much any of our cavalry are going to get a lot of attacks when you factor in Wolf Riders, for example, who have an impact attack, an assault shot, and the charge. So that's 3 attacks per Wolf Rider, up to 5 Wolf Riders. So you're getting 15 attack rolls and 15 damage rolls that you're benefiting with this spell, potentially. And that's going to be a lot of buffs. If you look at things like the Mist Riders, again, you're going to be getting a lot of bang for your buck, as it were, because again, impact attacks, you get the charge attack. If that can kill you, you get the Battle Wizard attack, which is then a Chain Lightning attack, which gets D3 each. So like, I don't remember that I did the numbers on it before, but it's a huge number of buffs that spell gets. Basically what I'm saying is this spell is actually phenomenal in what it can do for the rest of your list. So much so that I think while a lot of people want to look at Una to be sort of that like armor cracking list, like strictly speaking, in the way that I actually think more like Kaya 3 or Chromac 2, and she can do it, don't get me wrong. Hand of Fate is still going to be appropriate on a Griffin at times, but compared to some of those other casters, I think that she really has the ability to build one of the best all-around battle group or all-around lists that we have right now in the faction. She has a tool for nearly everything because she has Hand of Fate, as I mentioned, and Mirage, which we haven't talked about, and which is now again going to extend the threat range by 2 inches on the next turn for any model that it's on. It's a placement effect, which means you can use it to unjam infantry that want to make range attacks, like or make charges again, like Wolf Riders, Ravagers. Really, frankly, anything in the faction really loves to have this benefit. And while that's still pretty decent on, say, Griffin to be able to get a really long assassination threat, it's also particularly good on some of those other things that I mentioned because you can get it way farther up the field. And it can threaten more while your battle group is still being able to do what it does. So I think that really when you start looking at her kit, that those are things you need to keep in mind. Windwall is a particularly good defensive buff in the right cases, so make sure you're looking for that. I usually find myself utilizing terrain more than I do casting that, but that doesn't mean it's not worth casting. Twister is sort of the okay spell on her list. That said, do watch out for cases where it's going to be relevant. We do have a few things with Prowl, and most of them will not die to a POW 10. or you can potentially just sort of target one of their models with it, see where it goes, and then like run your models into it, and you're going to be able to trigger those problem models. It's one of the compelling reasons to actually consider the Stonekeeper with shifting stones, for example. And at times, blocking line of sight is going to be your like strongest play that you possibly can do, and you kind of need to know when maybe you sacrifice like a shifting stone, even if you don't bring the Stonekeeper, when you like sacrifice a shifting stone or two to be able to put a cloud in the right place, and like when that's going to be the strongest approach for you in the game. And there are some times that it will be. So that's kind of Una 2 in a nutshell. I think as we look at themes that are out there right now. Actually, let me step back. When we looked at list building, while I do think you should bring things other than just battle group with her, I do think that the minimum battle group with her, and this is kind of the starting place for me, is going to be probably a Gorax and 5 Griffins. I've not necessarily saying 100% that they don't have to all be Scarsfill's Griffins, but I think depending on what the rest of your list is accomplishing, that's probably going to be the best place to start. Only because even with Hand of Fate, our infantry are only going to do so much work for you. They can do quite a bit, but there's still going to be something of a limit there. However, even with said limit, they're going to be able. I think that's the amount you need to be able to actually get like all the benefits of her feat and her other abilities and stuff. You can bring more. I don't. What I don't recommend is bringing the 12 Scarsfells. I think you'll probably beat Khador with that. Good job. Or sorry, Khador armor bricks, heavy warjack bricks specifically. But I don't see you doing a whole lot else with the list consistently. I'm sure there'll be other places you can get wins, but I think you're going to want to mix up what you play a little bit. I do think you could place a large number of just Griffins and Call of the Wild and mix in some of the other Griffins, and you're going to get a little bit more anti-infantry. I know people are a little bit not as up right now on the Rotterhorn and on the Razorwing, but they definitely still are going to do more work into enemy infantry. So if you're going to go with a lot of Griffins, like more than I would say 6 or 7, start looking at some of these other Griffins to go in your battle group. Also consider the number of Goraxes you're looking to play. However, I think she can play in every theme but the Bones of the Ouroboros, and that's for obvious reasons. Call of the Wild, I think, is a good one, but like I said, consider your battle group carefully and the rest of your list. The Black Clouds are definitely strong. Shifting Stones we already talked about. I think Devourer's Host is a fantastic place for her as well. Ravagers can be strong with her. Wolf Riders, Blood Trackers, Blood Weavers, all good options with her. Again, they all take Hand of Fate very well. The accompanying solos, Death Wolves, etc., all strong options. And I think Secret Masters is another strong place for her. In my opinion, the double, you could do double Fulcrum or double Mist Riders, and I think both of those are good. You're going to get your 2 free Black Clads. With the Fulcrum, you'll have to bring either like the Druid Wilder or add the Stonekeeper to your Shifting Stones to get to the 2 free models. That's not a huge deal though. So do that, and then you've got some more good Hand of Fate targets while you can still focus on your battle group. Wild Hunt, there might be something there. It's not one I've practiced, but Hand of Fate on Reeves is going to give you a lot of shots potentially, so a lot of attack and damage rolls again that benefit from the spell. Wolves of Ouroboros can give you sort of the same thing and add flank into the equation. You could use Skinwalkers to sort of be a bulwark and keep, sort of like you send them in, soften things up, then send your birds over top of them and sort of like make your opponent deal with them as they're working their way back. All potentially good ideas. So anyways, I want to wrap this up because it's getting a bit long for this style of episode. But I think Una 2 is still a very fantastic warlock for us. I think she's probably one of the top warlocks to be considering, and I think you should really consider playing her a lot of different ways. Don't get locked into thinking she only plays one way. So anyways, thanks for watching.